From the Mercy One studio, Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Kelly Mesher-Collins with the Diocese of Des Moines. On today's show, we're visiting with Tom Chapman, Executive Director of the Iowa Catholic Conference. Election Day is less than 2 weeks away, and we're going to visit with him today about voting discernment, faithful citizenship, and civilized dialogue with others who may disagree with our viewpoint. But before we get to today's interview, let's find out what's on the Bishop's mind.
Kelly, kind of a festive time of the year, lots going on. We did have Tom Chapman, getting a lot of bonding time with him this week because we had our Iowa Catholic Conference Zoom meeting, bringing together the four dioceses and lay folks and everyone as well, on the feast day of St. John Paul II, yesterday. So obviously much beloved of all of us, and this kind of apostle of life and this Respect Life Month also. Did you have a kremke? Did you have a little sweet roll that John Paul was so fond of in that way? I didn't bring those to the office, I'm sorry, yesterday.
No, I wasn't aware of the sweet roll thing, but I always love my pastries, so yes.
I know, in the Pastoral Center, First Friday, is taking on new meaning to me here. There's usually some sweet involved as well. I don't know if St. Margaret Mary had that in mind when she had the visions of the Sacred Heart, but why not? Why not? And then today also the feast day of St. John of Capistrano. So 2 Johns this week, and swallows returning to John of Capistrano, and sometimes, I don't know, were swallows an issue when you were growing up on the farm or not?
Not that I recall. No, I don't recall.
No, okay. I'm just trying to deal with the swallows in my head sometimes, but anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, no distractions, but a little bit of a big game for Cyclone fans tomorrow against Oklahoma State. So we'll see.
Very exciting.
And the hopes are back, as they've risen, and soon the Hawkeyes will be also.
Yeah, they are doing well.
Competing as well, too. So, but, thinking about the Iowa Catholic Conference and faithful citizenship, we'll be talking with Tom about just kind of, again, taking the pulse of where we are. And today, the vote of the Judiciary Committee on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. And that's obviously been a very contentious thing that has kind of exposed the political lines. And we might be divided about the timing of the nomination. Obviously, that's controversial. But as we look at someone who, has been a respected jurist and a woman obviously very committed to her faith and her role and her vocation as spouse and mother, too. So, the kind of hits that were leveled there. And Steve White commented in the Catholic thing, that maybe why her candidacy and her, very great transparency about the role of faith in informing her overall view, even as she practices a kind of impartial jurisprudence. It's not like she's divorced herself from her faith. And I think that's very provocative for people, too, that maybe because sometimes kind of Catholic involved in our government and any of the three branches, really kind of indistinguishable at times, have kind of maybe checked their faith at the door, not in a way that maybe is really, kind of holistic in our own sense of our own person and our value set, and that might be there. And how, probably traceable a little bit back to that famous 1960 speech by John F. Kennedy and his candidacy in September of 1960, when I was 3 months old, to the Greater Houston Ministerial Association, where, he said, notably, I do not speak for my church on public matters, and my church doesn't speak for me. Whatever issue may come before me as president, if I should be elected on birth control, divorce, censorship, gambling, and other subjects, I make my decision in accordance with views and according to his conscience, and according to the natural interest. So, not a high water mark, I think, for the whole sense of the political vocation as something noble and dignity that, we can't be schizophrenic in ourselves. At the same time, we want to exercise our roles in accordance with the prescribed dictates. But I think we have to be, faithful and firm at times, adhering to our conscience and being willing to take the sacrifice that it entails. Otherwise, we just kind of allow this, beige kind of culture to dictate what we're about. So I think, there are those who are doing that. I think Amy Coney Barrett kind of calls the question again of who we're supposed to be. So.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll welcome Tom Chapman of the Iowa Catholic Conference. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Thank you, Blessman International, for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Everyone lives their life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How we use that time directly affects if our life will leave a significant impact or not. Each year, Blessman International leads Central Iowans on a 12-day, all-inclusive experience sharing the heart of Christ with children in South Africa. Teams are forming to do something significant in an African child's life. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. That's blessmaninternational.org.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
Welcome back. I'm Kelly Mesher-Collins with the Diocese of Des Moines. Election Day is less than 2 weeks away, and on today's show, we're visiting with Tom Chapman, Executive Director of the Iowa Catholic Conference, to talk about voting discernment, faithful citizenship, and civilized dialogue with others who may disagree with our viewpoint.
Good to have you, Tom Chapman. It's one of my great privileges as becoming bishop. I knew you already and knew the great work you did with the Iowa Catholic Conference, but to interact with you personally and just to see, I think, the respect you enjoy from many different quarters within our government and our society, and obviously pastors across the state who collaborate with you and trying to get the message out about our Catholic social teaching and about how all that we believe as Catholics impacts our choices as citizens of the state and of our country as well. But you kind of have been in this role for some time, but you have a footprint in the Diocese of Des Moines in particular prior to taking the IHCC job.
Yeah, actually, I started working for the Diocese of Des Moines about 30 years ago in communications, and started in 1990 back in the prehistory days, and Bishop Bullock hired me and did that, edited the Catholic paper, of course, the Catholic Mirror, and then became the chancellor of the diocese for several years before I started with the Iowa Catholic Conference. And so now I think it's going to be like 15th session at the Capitol coming up in January. So been around the block.
The things you've seen as the political winds change, they blow where they will, where they come from and where they go.
Right.
You do not know. But and your wife Paulette has been a longtime person. I was asked to give her a recommendation, and for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. She's making a presentation there, I believe. Has that already happened, or what's going on?
No, it's going to be coming up early next year. It's at their religious education conference, and Paulette will be talking about their kind of online program they have for faith formation, which is going very well in Altoona. And actually, Paulette
St. John and Paul Parish. St. John and Paul.
Yeah, St. John and Paul. And that's the reason we came to Des Moines to start, is she started working at Sacred Heart. So after a while, she kind of encouraged me to find a job. So that's what I did.
Yeah, enough of this deadbeat dad here. Okay?
Exactly. You want me to work?
Well, and that you have. But just again, the Iowa Catholic Conference and how that's been involved. And even in February, prior to the world being turned upside down, we engaged at the legislative breakfast and then met with people on both sides of the aisle. And I think that's very important, that our message and engagement, we want to have relationships that transform them, and transform their vision, and see how our values as Catholics have a place in advancing the common good. The document that's most kind of vivid right now, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, a call to political responsibility from the Catholic bishops of Iowa, so the collaboration of the four dioceses. Can you give us the kind of the DNA of that document?
Yeah, well, that's something that the Iowa bishops have put out in election cycles, I think since really the last 15 years or so. The bishops have collaborated, and the whole idea is to really get across to Iowa Catholics that you need to participate in political life. It's really a moral obligation. And then here are some principles that you might be thinking about as you vote, but probably even more importantly, as you get involved in different issues. And so this is something the bishops thought would be good to kind of give their Iowa spin on that topic. And so it's something that pastors, I think, appreciate, because they have something that they can take out to parishioners, before Election Day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as we're being inundated on all sorts of media with messages, this is a way where the church tries to have a voice and to be part of that kind of public dialogue, not only within the parishes, but for others also. And I think that, it draws from, and it's not just a distillation, it shows some of kind of the accent of the local priorities as we collaborate with the bishops and with you, Tom, but it's also drawing from that more long-standing forming consciences from the bishops of the Holy United States. Is that right? And how's that tied in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The U.S. bishops have had their document out for probably, every 4-year election cycle since, I think, 1976. And in one sense, the issues might change a little bit, but the principles really don't. And I think the foundational principle for all of those things is talking about the dignity of the human person. Every person is created in the image and likeness of God. And so a lot of things flow from that. Right to life, issues that relate to the common good. People all need good education. They need clean water and air. They need a job that pays fair wages, things like that. And so I think that's really the basic principle that we operate off of, whether it's the United States Bishop document or the Iowa bishops. And then it's just an idea of trying to get that across and have people really do some reflection on that in their participation in political life.
Marvelous. And, I think, that, we try and some would try and mute us, push the mute button on the Catholic Church and her pastors, saying, we should not have a voice and kind of threatening the tax-exempt status. But this isn't about partisan policy. It's that whole coherent ethic of life and Catholic social teaching and how it directly impinges, and not just our rights, but our responsibilities to take part in voting and the other things that are there. I think, our bishops have a cover letter in the U.S. bishops. The threat of abortion remains our preeminent priority because it directly attacks life itself and occurs within the sanctuary of the family. But we can't dismiss or ignore other threats to human life and dignity, such as racism and, as you were saying, the environmental crisis, poverty, and the death penalty. So, it becomes very volatile very quickly, and I think that's something that we can talk about too, how our own tone is part of our witness that we want to bring to bear. But it's not just the letters and communications I get from folks in the diocese, but it seems like around the country there are some people committed to trying to claim the ear of bishops and pastors, and sometimes saying, you're either too closely aligned with one party, or you need to dissociate yourself from someone and denounce certain people. But I think this kind of walking this line, as it says in Faithful Citizenship, there are two temptations in public life that we want to avoid. The first is the moral equivalence that makes no distinctions between different kinds of issues involving human life and dignity, that all issues are not of the same order, that there are some things that are intrinsically evil, whether it's our sense of the destruction of human life in any intentional way, or the nature of the family and marriage and things that might be present. So things that are there. So things that are always wrong must be opposed. But then the second temptation is the misuse of these moral distinctions as a way of dismissing or ignoring other threats to human life and dignity. And again, the degradation of our environment, racism and things resulting to unjust war, torture, war crimes, lack of health care, hunger, pornography, compromising religious liberty, and unjust immigration policy. So it's not an easy task, is it? Because the issues are many, and does any one politician really follow in that? So, can you kind of give us a kind of guide, as accompany us, if you will, how we would kind of approach some of these things and bring the virtue of prudence to bear?
Well, you talk about prudence, and I think that's really why the bishops focus on talking about issues rather than candidates. Because if you start to talk about candidates and opposing them or supporting them, that's all anyone's going to hear. They're going to hear about they support this candidate or not, and we're going to lose sight of those foundational issues, that the Catholic bishops and the Catholic, Church wants to talk about. And so we try to bring that perspective both to the legislature and in Congress. There's people that work with members of Congress in that way. And so there's a variety of things that we work on. And obviously, we work on what you would call respect life issues that have to do with abortion and assisted suicide. But also, we try to stick to those issues that we have a lot of expertise on in the Church. And so really I would say those issues would be Catholic schools and education. We have a great body of work on that issue. And then dealing with the poor and vulnerable, healthcare. When there are issues that deal with poverty, I think the Catholic Church can very much speak to those from our experience in what parishes do as far as their charity, but also Catholic Charities organization itself, resettlement of refugees, work with immigrants. We've got a lot of to offer society on that, and I think that makes sense for us to really get involved on those issues particularly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so where we really put our money where our mouth is, and the organizations that people are committed to, and are really our hands and outreach that embrace that. So it's not just political advocacy, and that the church not being, just as Pope Francis has reminded us, not just another NGO, a non-governmental organization. This is all fueled by the sense of our calling in Christ and our vocation that we take up in different ways, in the respective ways we do that. And not to lose sight, because we can easily get pretty jaundiced about politicians and things.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we were to accept the attack ads, there'd be nobody left standing, right, in doing this.
For
and
sure.
it'd be a great deterrent. I'm back into the confirmation mode, and that's a marvelous thing now to be able to get out post, some of the COVID restrictions that we had before, and to talk to young people. And I think they see this. And I said, what's one of the biggest challenges of faith? And it's kind of, they may not use the word, but it's a kind of cynicism that we don't trust anybody, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
who we want to be. That, Pope Francis and the Vatican Council remind us the noble vocation of politics. And so we need our young people to see and to see this as an expression of their faith commitment, their maturity and witness in a prophetic way, and that it's not just, single issue matters, but that the Catholic Church holds the most kind of comprehensive view of these things. But that makes it a little bit more of a robust challenge for our own deliberations and discernment of conscience. So I'm not preaching to you, Tom. I hope.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you the whole way. It does make it challenging because you don't want to put your faith in politicians, obviously, but we have to ask them to be their best selves. That's part of our responsibility. I really believe that. We have to expect them to do the right thing and keep calling them to do the right thing. And before we can do that, we have to do our own discernment. And so we do spend a lot of time when we're out and about, in the parishes, talking about discernment and just giving people a few tips for trying to bring these issues to their prayer life. Because I know for me, I'm always tempted to want to do what I want to do and to say yes to God, but more like saying yes, but, and then get on with my agenda. And so we really encourage people to reflect on these principles in their prayer life. And then we should support them once people make those decisions. They won't always make the same decision that you or I would necessarily about candidates or issues. But if they put the work in, I think we can respect the result. And so that's one of the things we try to get across, to Catholics as they're trying to decide how to vote.
Mm-hmm. And I think, it tests our faith, but the belief in God's providence, that God may allow persons, actors who maybe are not Catholic even to be his agents in society. And so, part of our own diversity and interaction with others, working in a federal republic where people have different values, but again, our Catholic presence in this too. So, you talk about prayer, and, it's not like, oh yeah, my voice is God's voice. The two are not always identical. And that, once in a while I should be even kind of unsettled in my prayer life. And again, the Holy Father mentions this and stretched in a way. And I even made reference to a couple examples in the Christ Our Life conference homily that I gave a few weeks ago too. But, and faithful citizenship talks about a kind of sacrament of charity that Pope Benedict Emeritus, the 16th, talk about a kind of Eucharistic form of life, that we're ordered to the community, the body of Christ, in this way, and that each member, that we worship pleasing to God, can't be a private matter. And so this is true also for all the baptized by virtue of their social and political making decisions on values, and their families. And so that subsidiary role of our own individual conscience, but at the same time, stretched in solidarity with each other too, that might be there. Do legislators seek you out? We've got about 2 minutes here, Tom.
Sure.
Legislators seek you out and, recognize that you're representing something that they want to be schooled on?
It's interesting. I found over the years, and I know that, Deacon Jim, who's also up at the Capitol every day, has experienced this. Sometimes legislators will unburden themselves a little bit in terms of what they're feeling personally on issues, or even sometimes in their personal life, And I think that's one of the things that, we can bring to bear. I think we are, in one sense, they may not always agree with the church on issues, but they do know that the church is not up at the Capitol to defeat candidates or parties. So I think we're seen as kind of a neutral group in that way, in that we're working on our issues and we're not necessarily trying to take people down. And so I think that's helpful. And I think you can get some work done around the edges on different issues because you're bringing that perspective. And so, it's not easy to be a legislator or a candidate. They spend a lot of time away from their families. And I think that's one thing that we can do through our presence, just being there. Sometimes you say 80% of life is just being there. Sometimes just being there, you can be effective in helping people with, what they're struggling with, but also trying to get those issues across. So
even a little bit of a ministry once in a while too, right? Just to listen to people and listen on that personal level and to reflect back to them, that they're in a tough spot sometimes, but their goodness and to try and allow them to find that peace that they can proceed in their discernment too. The recognition and the principles that we want to focus on principles rather than on polls, even though that's kind of the daily diet, I think, for most of our politicians, and the needs of the weak rather than the benefits of the strong or special interests too, and that the pursuit of the common good. And the common good isn't just and this is a Joensen editorial point, not just kind of stacking up all the material benefits that we hear, but it's a way in which we each participate, albeit diversely, in something that we can't realize otherwise together in society. Kelly?
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Thank you, Blessman International, for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Everyone lives their life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How we use that time directly affects if our life will leave a significant impact or not. Each year, Blessman International leads Central Iowans on a 12-day, all-inclusive experience sharing the heart of Christ with children in South Africa. Teams are forming to do something significant in an African child's life. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. That's blessmaninternational.org.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
Welcome back. I'm Kelly Mesher-Collins with the Diocese of Des Moines. We're back with Tom Chapman, Executive Director of the Iowa Catholic Conference.
Thank you, Tom, for hanging with us, kind of negotiating some of these things. And it's not global warming, but it's certainly heated the cultural environment right now. And I think people are on edge on lots of ways as well. And so the U.S. bishops and Des Moines Diocese has had an initiative that long preceded COVID and everything else, but really I think is ever more relevant today in terms of the Civilize It project, not just the what, but the how we engage each other. And this is something that's horizon extends beyond the election. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. And I think this is going to be especially good after the election, much less before. But the idea is for the church to invite everyone to model civility, love for neighbor, and respectful dialogue. And I think the church is one of those institutions that's pretty well positioned to help bridge that gap, of divisiveness, because we have so many people all over the political spectrum, but I think we can be a good model for how we talk about these issues, The first, I think, element is civility, and that's where we want to make sure we treat others with respect other people's human dignity as we discuss issues. The second point is clarity. I think that's an important one. It's not where we just go in a corner and, let all people walk all over us. But clarity, I think, is about standing up for our convictions at the same time while trying to understand others and make sure that we have some good points to make that are rooted in the gospel.
Certainly would be relevant when talking about immigration, for instance.
Oh, for sure. And then we always have compassion for others. And I think we really need to as best we can, presume others' best intentions. I think if we're going to make a mistake as Christians, I think we'd rather be criticized for maybe too much charity than too little. And right now in our political world, there's a lot of assuming the worst of each other, and I don't think that's necessary. I see it within the church for sure. I see it even within families and friend groups. It's almost shocking, how politics can divide people, but I think we can do better.
Indeed, Christ calling us, we are saints in the making, and how do we reflect that to those who are near to us, let alone those who are watching us, and how we give public witness in our way of speaking about things too. So I can't say that I'm all that thrilled or enamored of certain members, even of the Catholic clergy, who have got their YouTube videos out there, and it's kind of hard to detect any charity, even as they're trying to be prophetic and ardent supporters of life and other things that might be there. But how we give witness to that, how do we give account of the hope that's in us, the peace that's in us, at the same time as well. So, yeah, especially with Thanksgiving being a more downsized affair for most people, it becomes all the more important in the weeks after the election. Hopefully we'll know who the winner is by then, that we engage in relationships, even if we're going to leave politics aside in those moments too. So how does someone actually become an active participant in the Civilize It, and is there a spiritual lever that we're trying to invoke too?
Well, I think people can certainly make the pledge if they go to civilizeit.org, that website, civilizeit.org. They can make the pledge and do that kind of publicly, which I think is important. To me, this is about really building personal relationships, and politics at its best is building personal relationships. It's true about life as much as it is about politics. And so we got to build our relationship with Jesus and then with the people who are around us. And so I hope people really do that. I hope people don't get too alarmed if you don't get to figure out who's going to win or lose every election right on election night, because there's going to be a lot of ballots that need to be counted after that. It may take some time, but that's how the process works, and that'll be okay. So I'm going to keep pointing people to Civilize It to see if we can, make some progress on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, adjusting our expectations there, it was nice when we knew at a certain hour of the election night, but that's the modern realities, and especially intensified because of COVID, too. Mm-hmm. I'm aware that there's a dimension where, taking the pledge, which has different connotations for different people. Kelly, I hope I can still have a glass of wine if I do that, but prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, and committing ourselves to that. So thank you very much, Tom, for being with us, and Kelly, good to be with you again. So
yes. This has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thank you, our guests and listeners.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.